My name is Linda Harper. I work as a nurse at Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh. For 12 years, I've walked these corridors. I've seen thousands of patients. Some recovered and went home. Others, no. Some stories are still too heavy to tell. But never had I experienced anything like this. That day was an ordinary November day, a gray, windy Pittsburgh day. You know the kind when you barely have time for breakfast. The attending physician sent me to room 205. Holding a tray of medications, I knocked and walked in. An elderly man was sitting by the window. His hair was white, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He was staring out at the streets of Pittsburgh, cars passing along Forbes Avenue, people rushing to work. "Hello," I said. "I'm Nurse Linda. I brought your medications, Mr. Richardson." He turned his eyes toward me, and then his entire face changed. His eyes lit up. His hands began to tremble. His lips quivered, and he tried to stand. "Emma?" His voice was raspy, but it was drowning in joy. "My daughter, you finally came. I waited for you every day. Every day I stood by the window, watching for you to come." I froze. The tray in my hands began to shake. The pills nearly fell to the floor. I said, but the words wouldn't come. He stepped toward me, opened his arms, tears filling his eyes. "Emma, my daughter, I've missed you so much." And I just stood there, frozen, forgetting how to breathe. Because I wasn't Emma. I had never been Emma. If you'd like to hear the rest of the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. When I left the room, my hands were still shaking. I went straight to Dr. Harrison's office. I didn't even knock, I just walked in. "Dr. Harrison, can you explain something to me? Room 205, Thomas Richardson. He thinks I'm his daughter." The doctor adjusted his glasses, glanced at his computer, and let out a heavy breath. "Ah, yes, Mr. Richardson. Sit down, Linda." I didn't want to sit, but I did. He opened the file. Inside the blue folder was a photograph of an elderly man, Thomas, younger there, more alive. Thomas Richardson, 76 years old, diagnosed with late-stage Alzheimer's, admitted 6 months ago. I remained silent. Dr. Harrison continued. "He really did have a daughter. Her name was Emma Richardson." Past tense. Had. My chest tightened. Emma died 8 years ago in a car accident near Pittsburgh on Interstate 376. It was a rainy night. The road was slippery. She was only 28 years old. I closed my eyes. 28. My age. "Thomas never accepted it," Dr. Harrison said. "In the first few years, he visited her grave every week, but he never spoke. He could never say that Emma was dead. 'She's on a business trip,' he would say. 'She'll be back soon.'" The doctor looked back at the file, then at me. And now, because of the disease, he has completely forgotten. His mind protected him, in a way. In his memory, Emma is still alive, still young. He waits for her every day. "His family?" I asked. "A son? A wife?" "His wife passed away 4 years ago from a heart attack. He has a son, Michael Richardson. He used to visit every week, but—" Dr. Harrison paused. "But lately, he hasn't been coming." Silence fell over the office. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall could be heard. Dr. Harrison looked at me. "Linda, I know this is strange. I know it's ethically complicated, but the decision is yours." "What decision?" "Whether to tell him the truth or not." He stood up and closed the folder. "For some patients, the truth helps. For others, it only causes suffering. Think about it. Decide for yourself, Linda." And then he left the office. I stayed behind. I stared at Thomas Richardson's file. In the old photograph, he was standing with his daughter Emma at Point State Park. Emma was smiling. Thomas had his arm around her shoulders. They both looked happy. Neither of them knew that years later. I closed the file, and I had to make a decision. The next day, I came back. I had thought all night, what should I do? Tell him the truth or hurt him by taking it away? But I made my decision, at least for today. Today I would not tell him the truth. I entered room 205. Thomas was standing by the window again, looking out at the streets of Pittsburgh. Cars, people, life moving on. When he saw me, he turned and said, "Emma, you're late from work again. How many times have I told you? That downtown office isn't for you. You're always coming home late." I stopped. I opened my mouth to explain, but there was so much hope in his eyes. "Sorry, Dad," I said softly. "There was a lot of traffic on Forbes Avenue." Thomas's face brightened. He smiled. "Come, sit," he said, lying back on the bed. "I can see you're tired." I sat with him for a few minutes. He talked about Pittsburgh, about the old days. Then he fell asleep, peacefully, calmly. I stepped outside. I stood in the hallway. My hands were shaking. Tears streamed down my face, and I whispered to myself, "What am I doing?" The next day, I brought something from home. I had found them online, old photographs of Pittsburgh, newspaper clippings from the 1990s, pictures of Point State Park. Thomas was sitting on the bed. When he saw the photos, his hands began to tremble. "Look, this is from when you were a child," he said, taking one of the pictures in his hands. "Do you remember how we used to walk in Point State Park, where the three rivers meet? You would stand there and stare at the fountain." "I remember," I said softly. It was as if those two words unlocked a door sealed deep inside his memory. Thomas fell silent for a moment, then his breathing changed, and he began to speak. He talked about rainy Pittsburgh Steelers games, the cold stands of Heinz Field, old Sundays sitting beside his father. His voice trembled at times, then warmed with life. His eyes lit up. An old light, one that looked like it had been gone for years. A slow, sincere smile formed on his lips. It was the first time I had ever seen him this happy. It felt as if he wasn't inside the white walls of a hospital anymore, but living in another time. Other nurses stood in the hallway. No one spoke. They just watched. No one had ever seen Thomas like this, alive, remembering, feeling. Dr. Harrison slowed his steps as he passed by. He stopped at the doorway, looked inside. Not for a second, but for a long moment. There was surprise in his eyes and caution. Then he motioned for me to come out. I quietly stepped into the hallway. "Interesting therapy, Linda," he said. There was neither praise nor criticism in his voice, only a measured question. "But how long do you plan to keep this going?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know the answer myself. Days passed. The roles didn't change. I was Emma every day now. Each morning I entered the room, I was a little less Linda. One day, Thomas held my hand and said, "Emma, no matter how much money you make, no matter how successful you become, sincerity is what matters most. Never pretend to be someone else. Be yourself." Those words struck me from the inside, because I wasn't myself anymore. I had become someone else entirely. That night, I stood in front of the mirror at home. I stared for a long time, into my own eyes, tired and full of questions, and I whispered, "Who am I lying to? Him or myself?" A few days later, as I was walking down the corridor, someone called out to me, "Are you Linda Harper?" I turned. A middle-aged man stood there. His eyes looked like Thomas's. "Yes, I am. I'm Michael Richardson, Thomas's son." My heart stopped. "Why are you playing my sister's role?" he said sharply. "Why are you lying to my father?" "Michael, Emma is dead," his voice rose. "She's been dead for 8 years. And you're giving him hope?" I tried to explain. I talked about therapeutic benefit, about his calmness, his peace. But Michael shook his head. "My father deserves the painful truth, not lies. Tomorrow morning, I'll come and tell him everything. Please don't interfere." "But this could kill him," I said. Michael looked at me. There was pain in his eyes. "He's already dying. You're just forcing him to lose her again every single day." And he walked away. That night, I was on duty. Pittsburgh was swallowed by darkness. The streets were lit, but the hospital was wrapped in silence. It was close to 2 a.m. when the alarm from room 205 went off. I ran. Thomas was lying in bed. The monitors were beeping rapidly. Dr. Harrison arrived and checked him. "His vitals are dropping, Linda," he said quietly. "This may be his last night." I stood there. Thomas opened his eyes. He looked at me. He was very weak, but he whispered, "Emma, Emma." Dr. Harrison left the room, leaving me alone with Thomas. I leaned closer and held his cold hand. "I'm here," I said. Through the window, the lights of Pittsburgh shimmered, and I knew tomorrow morning Michael would come. He would tell the truth. But tonight, Thomas was calm. Tonight, he believed his daughter was with him. I held his hand tighter. "I'm not going anywhere, Dad." It was early morning. I hadn't changed shifts yet when I heard footsteps in the corridor. It was Michael. He had come early. "I'm going to wake him," he said firmly. "He needs to know the truth." "Michael, please. His condition wasn't good last night. At least wait a day or two," I said. "Step aside, Nurse Linda." He entered the room. I stayed at the door. Michael walked to the side of the bed. Thomas was sleeping quietly. "Dad," Michael said, gently shaking his father's shoulder. "Dad, wake up. It's me, Michael." Thomas opened his eyes. He looked at his son, confused. "Michael? Where is Emma?" Michael took a deep breath. "Dad, Emma isn't here. She died 8 years ago. You remember, don't you? The car accident on Interstate 376, that rainy night." Thomas's face changed. His eyes widened. His head began to shake. "No," he said. "No, no, no." "Dad, I'm sorry, but you need to know." "No!" Thomas shouted. "She was here yesterday. She talked to me." The monitor alarm sped up. Beep, beep, beep. Thomas sat up in bed, clutching his head. "Emma! Emma! My daughter! Where are you?" "Dad, she's dead." "Liar! You're lying!" I stood frozen in the doorway. I couldn't move. My heart was breaking. I called for Dr. Harrison. He ran toward the room and looked at the monitors. "Vitals are critical. Michael, step out now." But it was already too late. Thomas was crying, screaming, gasping for air. "Emma, my daughter, no, no." The monitor beeping grew faster, and then a flat line. Beep. Dr. Harrison tried to save him, but I sat down in the hallway, burying my head in my hands. Michael came out of the room. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He looked at me, said nothing. Then he walked away, as if he had simply completed his duty. I looked out the window. The sun was rising over Pittsburgh. The city was waking up. People were going to work. Life was moving on. But I stayed there. And I thought, my intention was never to make a lie feel right. My intention was simply to let him breathe a little easier by being Emma. That was all I wanted, for his final days to carry a piece of calm, a piece of joy, to fall asleep with memories instead of fear, to hear his daughter's name spoken with warmth, not trembling pain. But now I ask myself, did I do the right thing or the wrong one? Maybe the mistake began at the very start, the moment I first said, "Yes, I'm Emma." In that moment, I wanted to protect his world, but perhaps I began destroying my own. Would the truth have helped him, or would it have only brought more pain? Maybe, in a person's final days, what matters most isn't the correct answer, but a quiet smile. Maybe sometimes happiness is more merciful than knowing the truth. I don't know the answer. And maybe that is life's answer. Some questions have no resolution. Others live silently in a person's conscience for years. Now I ask you, please write in the comments, do you think I did the right thing or the wrong one? If you were in my place, would you tell the truth or choose his happiness?